What is the date? 18th? Right? 17th. This is Chair Ritter. It is December 17th at 5:31, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission. Mr. Fisher, may I please have a roll call, please?
Yes. Let the record show all commissioners are present except Commissioner Capiello.
Thank you. If you would all please stand with me, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Fantastic. Thank you. Please be seated. We don't have any special presentations or proclamations today, and I understand we're also no oral communications. Fantastic. We do have a presentation on item 8A on our work plan, so we will look forward to hearing from you at that point. Any changes to the agenda, Mr. Fisher?
No changes to the posted agenda.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the October 21st special meeting? I have a motion by Commissioner Hanson. May I have a second?
Second.
And we'll go ahead and vote on that.
And the motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8, our action items, first being our Parks and Recreation Commission work plan. We have completed quite a bit of it, so I would just like to kind of preface this as it's a great opportunity for those ad hocs that have completed the work plan to start thinking about projected outcomes. I'd like to start finalizing that in our January meeting, so next month, so that we could get that copy to Operations Manager Norgard, and he can go ahead and work with you to make sure that the copy is appropriate, and we will get it onto the work plan so that when February comes around, we can go ahead and have everything finalized. With that said, just going through the work plan, the first item is pretty well completed. And of course, if any commissioners wish to comment on any of these as I go through them, please stop me. Work plan item 2 regarding the commissioners being ambassadors and volunteering at various events. Just as an update, we participated, several of the commissioners participated in the holiday parade. Thank you very much for those that were able to participate, and then also thank you very much for those commissioners that were involved in the planning and coming up with a theme and working with staff on filling out the parade application. So thank you. Appreciate that. Is there any comments from anyone that participated or was involved in the planning that they'd like to say something?
I think next year we should take it up a notch a little bit. Besides just a banner, but doing something extraordinary. And we should start thinking about that earlier, like in the summer, next time. I mean, we followed the senior ladies who were dancing. and maybe we could do something, I don't know, different.
I think that's a great idea, and it sounds like I have an early volunteer for the ad hoc next year, so thank you. All right, let's also let the record show that Commissioner Capiello has arrived 5 minutes after, so definitely want to include him in the meeting from this point on. Any other comments regarding the holiday parade? I would say that I was neglecting my duty of supplying Manager Norgard photos of us from the parade. So darn, I didn't get to that, but next year I'll be sure to include those photos when it's even more extravagant. All right, moving on to action number 3, guest speakers. I have reached out to BCK programs. They were originally scheduled to have students present to us in November during our meeting, which unfortunately got canceled due to the city council needing the room. Unfortunately, we're unable to do anything in December. However, we are considering them again for the January schedule, depending upon what their availability is and their parents' availability. So more to come on that. We still have 2 meetings left. If there are any other guest speakers that we might want to include, we do have the January and February, or probably just the February meeting available if BCK comes through. The ad hoc that is working on plan number 4, the volunteer promotion and recruitment, do you have anything you wish to add? I think that one is pretty well done. We'll just continue to move on. Number 5, the outdoor adult fitness equipment. I am happy to report that I attended both CPP meetings for Orpheus and for Glen Park. We were basically doing a community outreach to gauge the community's interest and comments regarding the playground replacement that we're looking to do. The staff, which is actually directed by the engineering department, who is the project lead on the playground equipment and the adult fitness. They led the meeting. We got some good feedback, not as much feedback as I would like to have, but we did get some feedback. We also got some online feedback, which I haven't actually seen myself, but I've heard from people that have put in their support for the outdoor adult fitness equipment, and I didn't really hear anything at the meeting with regards to any distraction or issues against the equipment. So I'm excited to say that that's continuing to move forward. The next thing that's involved is staff is going to work with the engineering department, with the consultant that's involved in the playground equipment replacement project to finalize exactly what the plans will end up being. And then once a decision is made as to the exact scope of the project and equipment that's going to be needed and the actual plans of how it will all lay out, at that point, they'll go through the processes of doing that, getting the permits, et cetera, and then hopefully by the end of 2025, we might see both the playground equipment replacements installed as well as the adult fitness. So that would be in Glen Park and Orpheus Park. Glen Park's in Cardiff and Orpheus is in more central Encinitas. That concludes my report on that particular item. Commissioner Hanson, did you have any other comments you'd like to add?
No.
Moving on to the tennis court and pickleball court, I know this ad hoc has been especially busy. This is item number 6. So we have someone who is interested in speaking to this particular work plan item. She has made a request that she be able to speak after some discussion has happened regarding the presentation by the ad hoc to maybe address some of the comments. I am fine with allowing that for her so that she can hear what we have to say and then respond to it. I think that would be perfectly fine in this instance, and since we only have one speaker. So I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to the ad hoc if you want to kind of go through your extensive memo that you put together. So thank you very much for hard work on that, and looking forward to your presentation on it.
Most of the work. Well, that's not entirely true, but thanks. Is the the pictures and stuff, as that's available. I think it's probably best to start with that, just to get the overview. What the ad hoc has done, we've had a couple meetings, we visited the courts, we've talked with pickleball players and reviewed correspondence that's been sent to the city in regards to the usage of the pickleball courts, and have had discussions about ways that we can improve the way that the courts are being used right now. So we've laid out in this report just sort of like what the situation is and what suggestions to change if we're going to make any changes to the rules of the courts. But jumping ahead, I think it's helpful to kind of look at what we're dealing with. So up there is the picture of the Cottonwood Creek courts, and the A court, the B court, and each of those courts have 4 pickleball courts that are able to be used. And obviously you can't play pickleball and tennis at the same time. So we have, currently the rules are that you have group play on all of the courts when they're used as pickleball courts, but there is a priority given to court B whenever there's tennis players that arrive and want to use the court. And court A has the pickleball priority. And for the most part, it seems like, and Commissioner Hanson can pipe in too, that it's mostly pickleball players that are using these courts throughout the day. And what happens is, and as we've had speakers in the past come and talk about, group players tend to come in groups of 4 or more. They'll take the courts on for an hour or sometimes more, and there's not a rotation on those courts. If they're playing for an hour, or maybe there's 6 players that are rotating in, they'll end up maybe using it more than an hour, and you have people waiting to use it, and they have to wait a little bit longer. And then you have individuals that show up that aren't with groups, and those individuals don't get a chance to play usually because they're not part of the group. And so what was considered here is whether or not we should be changing any of the priority usage of these pickleball courts in particular to open play, as well as group play. There's a bit of puzzle pieces here, and I think it wouldn't be, it's definitely appropriate to discuss that there's also the Moonlight Beach court that has 1 tennis court and has the ability for 4 pickleball courts to be played there. And so we've had some comments from the public that the Moonlight Beach court has some like surface issues that make it a little bit harder for pickleball to be played. It seems like the pickleball players prefer Cottonwood Creek, but we know that Moonlight Beach is getting used for pickleball as well. And let's see, if there are any other issues or assumptions that were made. One of the goals I think that the ad hoc is definitely trying to achieve here is to get the best usage out of the court and try to include as many players as possible, even if they're not group players, and to address the issue of maybe excessive use of the courts, meaning some people are taking advantage of the time that's reasonable to be using the courts by coming in like larger groups, maybe even fashioning their own like private tournament, so to speak, and instead of like using a reasonable amount of an hour usage, they're sitting on the courts for a few hours maybe, and there's just not a lot of rotation that should be happening if there's a backup of people that are wanting to show up. I can say, like in full disclosure, I think one of the difficult things as far as what data we're building on would be what times of the day have the most impact of group use. But we did have some information in regards to some of the group players suggesting that like the morning time is the more popular time, and if after the morning time hours, that it's a little bit easier to maybe open the courts to open court usage instead of group court. So anyway, we did a little bit of back and forth of like various ways that we can possibly incorporate open play. And I want to preface this latter part of this memorandum as being just suggestions. I would encourage this full discussion on like what's the best thing to do. I can say I personally think that we should include some open court play on these courts, on Cottonwood Creek in particular. How you do it, whether that's 2 courts or 4 courts at a time, I think is really should be discussed. But it would be my view that we at least open up a couple of these courts to open play. And I think it's explained in this memo. If you wanted me to read through those options, I can do that as well. I think it's actually proper to go through some of the reasoning for the recommendations. Yeah, offering the courts for open play will provide more opportunities for individuals who play and use the courts that currently cannot if they're associated with playing with a group, and that's going to individuals that aren't with a group, aren't really getting an opportunity to use these courts. Open play should encourage faster rotation times and allow more players to play and help lessen the wait times. Group play and misuse of the group play rules are causing longer wait times. Open play is open for all who wish to get into the queue, and group players can queue to play with the open play courts, whereas individual players are rarely, if ever, able to find play on the group courts. And what that is individual play. Individuals will show up and they kind of put their paddle down in like a queue or a rack, and they'll play a game. Whoever the losers are, they come off. The next players that are in line will jump onto the court and play. So they rotate through a lot quicker. That's what that queue means. And city courts. Oh, and then there's another aspect here of what we're supposed to do with Moonlight Court. There was a request of us to make some decision as to do we keep Moonlight Court open, and whether to continue just using it as it is being used as both a tennis court and a pickleball court. And in my view, they are being used, and I don't think we should recommend that Moonlight Court be shut down right now, especially if we don't know the timing or when or if future courts might be built. If the city was to decommission that court for other reasons, for environmental reasons, I think it's appropriate to allow people to use the courts appropriately until that time. So anyway, before I get into like the various options, are there questions or anything to discuss in regards to some of these assumptions and issues or anything that I've missed, Commissioner Hanson?
Well, the only thing that stands out to me in your recommendations is the suggestion to make pickleball a priority at Cottonwood for all the courts, and tennis would be priority at Moonlight.
Yeah, again, I think that's worthy of a discussion. It just seems as though most of the people were really talking about the impact of Cottonwood, that's the one there are more wait times. So I think if we were to go with options that are going to allow for more open play courts on Cottonwood, that it's possible it might be best to consider whether or not we like change the priority of the tennis usage to Moonlight just so that most of the pickleball players will go to Cottonwood instead of Moonlight, and perhaps it will allow more tennis time for those players there, especially with the feedback from pickleball players who are saying they prefer they prefer Cottonwood over Moonlight because of the court texture. So that was the reasoning for that. But again, I'm not like, it's not the hill I'm gonna die on as far as like whether we make a decision to make a priority of Moonlight for tennis or otherwise. I just think wanted to lay a foundation for the ultimate issue, which is I believe we should include open play. And we're tasked with at least trying to provide a recommendation to the city as to any change in the rules and whether we want to keep Moonlight Court available. Right. So yeah, if there's any other discussions before we get into any of these options, I think it's worth doing that.
I have just a couple kind of gameplay questions. So if they have an hour to play, when does that hour start? Does it start when the game begins with that foursome, or is it when finally somebody comes up and they want to use the court?
I think currently it's really like the honor rule. So if somebody is on the courts, another group shows up, they ask, how many more games, like, what's going on, what's the situation? People on the court or say, oh, this is the last game, or we just got here. And so the hour really is sort of dictated by the people currently on the court, and that they're being honest that they started whenever they started.
And then in open play, what happens if you have, you're ready for a rotation of 2 new people, but the next person in line is basically an individual and doesn't have another person with him? How does that work with regards to how they rotate onto?
So it would be whoever's next in line gets to go on the court, and if there's 2 losers, so to speak, for that game, one of those would stay on the court. So people are playing on an individuals that are playing on an open court, they're just trying to get reps and get out there and play. And so as long as there's people willing to play, they're going to work it out. And it sounds like in other courts and other jurisdictions close to us, Carlsbad and whatnot, the open play can get crowded, meaning it's usually the opposite issue. There's usually plenty of people that are in line. But and I would say it's actually true for group players that might have an odd number. There's 5 of them. They'll rotate it out in a similar way. Somebody sits out a game and then they rotate in. I think what we got feedback-wise from people who've presented here and written to the city is that individuals right now don't feel like welcome when they show up, and there's not a court that's allowing this sort of rule structure for open play, and that the group players aren't necessarily wanting somebody they don't know to like, oh, sure, pop in here and play with us. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. And, I mean, the reason why group players are playing as a group is because they're there as a group of friends that they're looking forward to playing together as friends. So on the opposite side of the open play situation is the benefits of group play, which is basically that. They come with their foursome, or maybe they have a few extra that they rotate in and out, and they have an opportunity to play with one another without having to incorporate strangers into their game. So I agree that there should be some type of combination of both. I also think that whatever we end up deciding, and it certainly isn't something we're going to decide tonight because we want to get more community input from everyone so that we can really feel like we're representing what the people want as best as possible, is that whatever we do decide on, along with staff, is that it should just be like a test period of, let's say, 6 months, that let's give this a shot, let's see how it plays out, what kind of conflicts that could potentially arise, is everyone getting to play, or are there problems with people not being able to play with their group? And then I think with that feedback, we can decide as to whether it becomes a permanent policy or not. And of course, that's an operational decision in the sense that the Parks and Rec Department will kind of finalize some of that, but I think that our recommendation should be that it should be a kind of a test period just to let the people know that we're giving a shot, we're trying to keep everybody happy, and please give us feedback if you have any. I'd invite any other commissioners to add additional comments.
Well, just a quick question. What's the current rules right now that is it group play, is it open play, or is it a combination, or?
It's currently only group play on the courts, and the priority, like I explained.
Yeah.
But no, there's not a designated open play court at all.
You're single, you're at a lot.
Yes. I mean, we haven't heard complaints from people who are single players that have shown up and maybe got incorporated in group play, but we have definitely gotten some feedback from players that they would like that option. They're going at what I've heard, and people have presented at our meetings in the past, and some feedback to the city is they're driving outside of the city of Encinitas to go find individual play on public courts in Carlsbad and elsewhere. And being that we have these courts available, they would like to at least see the opportunity to have open play here.
Got it, thanks.
I think it's also worthwhile to maybe talk a little bit about, it looks like the Carlsbad court system where they have social courts and they have challenge courts. Did you want to speak to that at all?
Sure. And there are some other rules that we had from other courts that we didn't include in here, but that were really similar. But essentially, it would be taking open courts and allowing it to go to another like sub-level of one court. It will be designated as like a maybe for better players. They're going to be focused on that court, and you kind of hierarchy down to other courts that are also open play. And like the challenge courts would be kind of what you're working to. And it's also to sort of divide by level. You don't want somebody who's like a newer player to be just having to be jumped onto a court with much more advanced players. So it's sort of trying to help along the level of play by court. And I think these rules are suggested. I think the players do a good enough job of sort of self-picking, who they should be playing with. But I think it's whatever we decide ultimately would probably include coming up with some new signage to encourage a certain type of conduct and perhaps designating like, hey, if there's a dispute, over which court is which, like we're going to say this particular court could be a challenge court for those better players, so people know what court to show up to queue up for. That's what is next to. There's the pickleball rules. I think this was from Carlsbad in this document that kind of explain the challenge court. If you lose, you leave. And you can wait for the next game, and then I've seen additional rules where, that's actually here too. Winners only play 2 games, and then they also have to go off. Whereas a challenge court, if you keep winning, you can stay forever. And again, that's not really fair if you have better players on courts with not so great players and they're there forever. So I think this really kind of exists with sort of like legacy open courts where they know the hierarchy of things, court with more advanced players, sure, make that a challenge court. Well, we have to win to get them off of it kind of thing. But the rest, I think in our circumstances, it's probably best if we're going to explore something in more of a, let's give it a try, I don't know if like going to challenge courts right out of the gate is the best way to go, just because we don't know how it's going to end up. But certainly something to consider, and that would be something I would imagine as individual play maybe is starting to happen there more. We would get feedback saying, hey, this really should be a challenge court, or they're okay with just the social kind of situation where two wins and you're off and back in the queue.
Commissioner Evers, did you have a question?
Actually, it was a similar question about like levels or the challenge court versus social. So thank you. And this is very helpful. So appreciate all the content.
Excuse me. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
No. I would just say also that this has been quite a few months, and even before my time on this commission. And I know Mr. Norgard we met with him and we discussed how this has been something that has kind of been an issue and that we'd like to get a resolution to it sooner than later. And I know that we were tasked with, let's try to get this on board and discussed as soon as possible, not put it off until, the springtime with the limited amount of meetings we have left. So I think I'm glad we're doing it, and it was a group effort. I know I'm doing a lot of the talking, but this is just me conveying what we, as an ad hoc, discussed and, considered. And if you think it's appropriate, we can go through what like the potential options are, so that the person who's here to speak maybe can see what we're like looking at as a scope. Does that sound right?
I think it would be a great idea to explore some of the options, because ultimately that's what we're going to whittle down to.
So, and again, I'm not married to any of these options in particular. So I have here 3 potential options, and there's certainly more. But I think these ones kind of are in the realm of making some sense.
Excuse me one moment. Manager Norgard, could you put the screen back to the courts so that when we refer to them, that fantastic.
There you go.
My apologies.
No, good.
Continue.
That's a good idea. So as option 1 here, it would be to designate courts 1, 2, 3, and 4 as group play. And those are what currently are the priority pickleball courts anyway. And then courts 5, 6, 7, and 8 would be as open play. So this would be an option that would basically mean we would make 4 courts open play and keep 4 courts as group play. And then designate Moonlight as a tennis priority. I guess another segment of this would be taking away tennis priority from Cottonwood. It would be part of this option, and making Moonlight be the tennis priority court. And I know they are just across the street. It is inconvenient. I don't want to suggest people just get in their cars and walk across the street, but with enough notice, I think this option can work. Option number 2 would designate, this would be more of like a timing of the day play, would be designating courts 1, 2, 3, and 4 for group play until 10 a.m. and then allow open play on courts 1, 2, 3, and 4 after 10 a.m. and continue to give court B the tennis priority, and keep 5, 6, 7, and 8 as group play at all times when there's pickleball players there, not tennis ball players. And then continue Moonlight as it is, which is a group play currently. And then option 3 would be to designate 2 of the courts at Cottonwood Creek for open play and keep the remaining 6 as group play. And I don't know if that matters, like which particular courts you're going to make the 2 open play. It could be 1 or 2, it could be 4 or 3. But I think with this option, we'd still be looking at the rules remaining the same as far as tennis and pickleball priority, But for courts 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are pickleball priority, we would just split them between open play and group play. And again, I think with some more thought and discussion, there's definitely some other options out there. And I don't want to leave off that one of the options is to keep things the way they are, obviously. I think open play should be incorporated in some fashion, but I don't want to overlook that. Certainly as a commission, we can decide to just keep things the way they are. And again, I don't think it's worth, I don't think we need to get into whether we do social courts or challenge courts until we make a decision as to, how many courts and in what way we're going to make open courts.
Commissioner Evers?
So the options I'm seeing are all kind of a blend of the group and open. Was there any look at just having it all open?
No. And here's why. I do think currently, predominantly, the players are group players that use these courts. So I don't want to take that. I don't think it's right to just say, nope, we're just moving over to individual play. I think what we're trying to accomplish is that there's enough of a group of players that would like to have individual play as an option.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, and you kind of addressed it time a little bit in option number 2 regarding group play until 10 a.m. During the winter months, we get a lot less daylight, and so that's a lot less time to play pickleball because all the courts are not lit at night. So, that would guarantee group play all the time throughout the year in the morning, and then it would just end up being a little less of the open play in the late morning and afternoons. I do feel, too, that, you speak about how a lot of the people, or the majority of the people, seem to be enjoying group play, and part of that, too, is that's what we have. So we're not really having an opportunity for people to see, well, what is it like if we had open play? So I don't know if I would necessarily want to do a 50-50 split on it, but I would say that, I like the idea of, like, for instance, option 3, where, maybe you do 6 group play and 2 open play. Just to, again, doing this as a test, see how it works out. That might be a good way of doing it. I do also kind of like Commissioner Hansen's idea of allowing Cottonwood to be pickleball and dedicating Moonlight as being tennis priority. The challenge, of course, is that we would be technically losing a potential amenity, being tennis, at Cottonwood. And that would obviously have to be evaluated and get some community input on. However, if most of the courts are being used for pickleball at this point at Cottonwood, then I just feel like if you can have that be kind of our dedicated pickleball courts, it certainly alleviates potential conflicts and confrontations between tennis and pickleball people when it's like, well, that's all pickleball. And then it basically then becomes sharing, so to speak, at Moonlight, but making it clear that there's one court and it's tennis. And of course, we have a dedicated tennis court at Glen Park in Cardiff as well.
I want to also add that one of the concerns that I saw expressed by at least one person who reached out was this fear that if we open if we change some of these courts to open usage, that it'll encourage people from out of Encinitas to come and line up and impact the court so that there would be an increase of usage in these courts, was the concern. And I think that's an interesting point and a valid concern. However, I didn't see that there's any evidence that there's not people from out of Encinitas using these courts currently either, right? So I think it is a good place to start to see what happens if we're going to do it, like ease into it and see if that is the case. If there is now complaints that we've got way more people showing up to play that they've never seen before, and whether that's attributable to, oh, these are just a bunch of individuals that were having to leave Encinitas to go play, and now they're back home and closer to home to use our facilities, versus really the concern that we have a bunch of non-Encinitas people, taking over time of the courts. But again, I haven't seen evidence of it yet. This is just an expressed concern, and I think it's fair to at least bring that up to everybody as part of our thoughts.
I'd like to make a comment on that. When I visited Cottonwood, spoke to a bunch of players, and they were from Vista and Carlsbad and Oceanside. And so that issue does exist currently. Yeah.
And I would also say that hopefully we'll be welcoming the Encinitas residents that would like to play individually and being able to use their parks for that. The other thing that I would say is that our parks aren't just for our residents. It's for our visitors. It's for our neighbors and our sister communities, and that we use their park trails, they use our park trails, so we all enjoy each other's community amenities. So I don't want it to become too much of a, well, you're not from Encinitas, you shouldn't be here type of a thing. So it's hard to maybe convey that, but I certainly don't want that to become an issue.
Yeah, that's a great point. Both of your points. I also think we get back to what the real call of the issue is that currently there are some conflicts and concerns about misuse, and it's not necessarily out of town people misusing. It's that people are overusing and there's excessive wait times, or they're overusing this honor system of an hour at a time. And so really the goal should be to try to come to a place where there's less complaints that we're having to get because they're self-policing. Ultimately, these facilities are self-policed. Most people all get along, work it out. But the more that we can outline, how we're suggesting it be used in a fair way that's encouraging to different types of players, the better, and hopefully, more fair and to encourage more getting along and having fun.
Any other comments from the commission? Go ahead.
Just also considering the Moonlight Court, if it has the potential to maybe be closed down at some point, maybe not making that the only tennis facility and then having to backtrack later on, but just a thought.
Thank you. I think that's a good point. I would say, though, that none of these amenities, and particularly that Moonlight Court, is ever going to disappear until there's some replacement. I would also say that the cost and the process of removing that court is excessive. And I can't imagine the city doing that in the short term, considering that the donut hole budget options that they have already available, that I can't imagine that they decide that becomes the new priority. So I really think that court's going to be there for us for years. I think that in an earlier commission meeting, we've heard about the opportunity of adding both pickleball and tennis courts to ECP. And if that's the case, I think that's only when we would even consider decommissioning that court. at this point. Plus, we just spent money on resurfacing it. Yeah.
That was my follow-up question. And that's been done twice now or just the one time?
Manager Norgard, do you?
Once most recently, but we've done it several times.
It's all part of it being on a wetland. So yes, I think that that's important. I don't want to continue to lose tennis amenities for the tennis community by any means. Any other comments?
Is more of a question, but and was there any discussion with the Parks and Rec staff about like administratively like the oversight of these options? Is there any impact to the monitoring or the oversight of it?
No, I think right now, my understanding is that they get somewhat regularly comments and inquiries with some issues over there, and they certainly don't have the staff to be showing up there and monitoring babysitting in any sense. And I think, and I don't think there's any fiscal impact to the changing of the rules. Manager Norgard can correct me if I'm wrong, with the exception of if we do recommend going to open play, that a part of that should entail new signage and potentially like a rack queue, so that there's some organization to, it's not just like thrown on the ground, that there's some order to who's next in line. If there's any, if I miss.
No, you're right on. We don't have staff to monitor them all the time. We do have some field ambassadors that'll go out occasionally and talk to folks, especially if we're seeing unpermitted uses like lessons and things like that. I also want to say, great job on a very thorough and thoughtful analysis and some solutions. As you know, by getting into this, there's virtually unlimited options, which are made even more difficult by the limited amount of court space that we have. So I think the direction of the conversation is spot on. We already have the paddle racks. We ordered them quite a while ago. We have some additional benches that would go out to Cottonwood as well. We're just kind of waiting to see how all this plays out before we deploy anything.
One thing that I would recommend is I feel like there's probably a consent within the commission on the other part of what you were speaking about with regards to the deactivation of Moonlight. And what I would propose is if your ad hoc could come up with exact motion language for us to consider, and we'll make a motion of that in our January meeting next month. And we'll finalize that part of it.
So just specifically to the ask of us by the city of what we're doing with Moonlight, to come up with motion language for some resolution or recommendation for that.
And with a little bit of reasoning as to why we're suggesting that.
Yeah.
And Manager Norgard, I'm sure, would be happy to assist with that language. Thank you. Any other comments?
One other quick comment, and maybe I'm speaking on something that I know nothing about, but hasn't stopped me in the past. So I think when it comes to our options on how to split this up, or I would imagine it would be best if it was backlog related, meaning that we really can't predict whether 4 group courts or 4 open courts are going to fit the bill there. But it almost seems like it would seem to me that you'd allow group play until there's a backlog of people that were singles, and then start rotating and say, court number 1 now becomes open play, court number 2, depending on the backlog, because there just doesn't seem to be enough. I could see whatever we decide that's not formulaic like that, we're going to have a line of people in here. Maybe that's going to happen anyway. Let me consider that, and I'll get back to you.
Well, I'll just say that there currently isn't open courts, so nobody's coming to use it for open court play. As soon as that word is out, they will show up. If you build it, they will come. And if there's 2 courts, they will come. If there's 4 courts, they will come. I think what we will learn, whatever decision we get to, if I could be wrong, if it's a consensus amongst us that we would like to include open court play, then really the issue is how many courts. And that's worthy of discussion. And we will find out whether by deciding 2 courts, whether there's too many people waiting for 2 courts, or whether there's 4 courts and there's not enough people using the 4 courts. We'll get that data point, but I don't think we get that until we at least open the door and let people know that there's
Right,
open
and
court play.
right. So I absolutely agree that some open play has to happen, but it seems to me if we had some type of formulaic approach, I think my one concern, because I'm a bit of a billiards player, and this happens in bars all the time. When you have 3 tables there, it's really the same. Now maybe I'm not seeing it the same way, but a lot of times you'll be playing group play with a bunch of your friends, and some single wants to come over and play, and he'll put quarters on your table, but there's 2 other tables there sitting there, and it's like, well, we got our group play going on here. You should bring some friends in. What are you gonna interfere with our group play here? When so there seems to be. Again, let me put my thoughts together. I'll put it in writing to an email to you. But I just don't think that. I think that there's a good formula here that's just eluding me.
If there aren't any other comments by the commissioners, I'd like to go ahead and invite our guest speaker to come up and speak. She'll have 3 minutes.
Since nobody's here. Hi, I'm Mary Ann, and I'm glad I got to listen because it totally changes what I was going to speak on, but sort of keeping to the same topic. I've been playing pickleball there since you opened up the pickleball courts, and I know a lot of the people that play. We've all become very friendly, and I'm just going to tell you my experience and a couple suggestions, and that is my group arrives at Cottonwood at 7 a.m., and there's no problem getting courts. I mean, you have to get there right on the dot. We play for 90 minutes from 7 to 8:30. There has never been a conflict, and often there are tennis players, it's the same 4 people that come about 3 times a week that play on the others, on B court, and we manage. Often there's an empty court for us. We've become very tight, and it is hard to accept people into our group who we don't know because this has just been our routine. On Saturday, I play with some of the same people, but we started out with 4 people, and now we have 20, and we call them the orphans. They are people who have come in, they've been alone, and we've brought them in, and we love them, but we're not really accepting more people because what happens is that we're like taking over the court, the entire thing. And we play, again, for about 90 minutes. 90 minutes is an appropriate time. You may think an hour is, but to really rotate. And if you're just playing for a few, it's 90 minutes to really get everyone to switch and play with each other. And then we leave. So Monday through Friday, we absolutely leave at 8:30, and there's never been a problem, and other people come in. They kind of know our routine, and they know we're going to be there at 8:30 because those 2 courts leave. My suggestion, I'm just going to believe that maybe you're going to take away the tennis, because I think it hasn't been a conflict for us. If tennis players have come in, we move. We're very polite. We just finish our game and we move. But I think I've overheard that there have been some conflicts with later on in the day. The weekend gets extremely crowded and is a whole different story than Monday through Friday. May I go on a little bit longer, just a tiny bit?
I'll give you a
longer?
couple minutes,
Okay.
because you do have some valuable information to share with the commission.
My suggestion would be that courts 6 and 8 become open play. Let's say that the tennis courts go to Moonlight Beach. So, and you would put up the rackets, and you would maybe put up signs that say beginner, intermediate, intermediate, advanced. That way, if somebody is pretty much a beginner, they know where to go, and they're not going to get stuck with somebody who's going to, take them out right away. I have played at Poinsettia, and I don't play there any longer, and our friends don't play there any longer because it becomes a madhouse, and you have, if I'm playing with a younger person, they're going to take me out. Even though I'm a decent player, I can't stand up to them. And so that's sort of what we're afraid of who we're going to end up having to play with, someone who's just a beginner or someone who's just going to, bang. They're called bangers. So I live right there at Cottonwood, right behind, right, okay? And I go through the park during the afternoon, and it's full of young people. And they're having a great time, and there's music going, and the shirts are off, and the tan bodies, and the whole bit. They're an entirely different group of people playing, and it's almost a madhouse when I look in there. It's not like us seniors who are playing early in the morning. And I'm wondering if that's where some of the conflict is coming from, that group. Now, just quickly getting back to the tennis players. Before pickleball, those courts were always empty. So I used to run my dog in there and train him in there. Encinitas Community Park, we would love to see courts there, and add a couple of tennis courts. The tennis courts at Poinsettia are empty. I've hardly ever seen anybody fill those courts. So it is tough when you've got 16 people playing pickleball, mainly on the weekend, and 2 tennis players come in and say, and you got to move them out. So that is my suggestion. I am fine with open play. I travel. I always take my pickleball, and I always try to find friendly people to play with, my husband and I. So I am very open to that aspect of it. And I think if you get 2 courts going, at least to begin with as a trial, and take it from there. So that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your thoughts. Just for clarity, you suggested courts 6 and 8 be open play, and the rest of them to be group play. I mean.
It's always groups that come at this point, and there are some solo people that show. But this way, and this I've been to a lot of different pickleball courts. This way, they don't have to cross over like 8 and 7. They strictly, they have the signage on each side, they have the racks there, they put up their paddle, and usually what happens is when 2 people go off, the next 2 paddles, whether they know each other or not, go on. And so this way, they're just able to not cross over, somebody's court to take.
So the paddles would be aligned along the fence there.
Yes, on the west side.
Right.
And they'd have benches where they can wait, and they would just rotate in. And if you want to mark them, like I said, beginner, intermediate, advanced. I've played at a lot of courts that have signage like that. And if nobody's in the beginner, then you can just go over there and play that. It doesn't have to stay empty. And I would say that if nobody shows up solo, that a group can take the open play courts, but they will have to move. But I would also 90 minutes is really, for a group play, is, and I would say for the people who come as doubles, like just 2 people playing, make them 1 hour. Because they're really sweating and working up, 1 hour I think is plenty for them. But for 4 people, 90 minutes. I mean, that would be, of course, up to you, but I think that just works out fine, and that's what we've been doing, and no problem whatsoever.
And one final question. So if, for instance, all of Cottonwood became pickleball only, is it your thought that from a ratio standpoint that you would do 2 courts for open play and then 6 courts for group play?
I would start out that way. And I agree, the amount of parking of people coming in solo, there isn't enough. People are already circling around and having to park. They're parking up on Arroyo, where I live right up above Arroyo, and they're parking there, which is no problem. But in the dirt across from Cottonwood, they're parking. And this is mostly later in the day. It's very crowded later in the day. And I think, and from what I understand, a lot of the people from Poinsettia who always played there have created a following during the day to play. And they're young. I mean, it's like somehow the word got out. And we're all old in the morning. I don't know. Apparently they don't work. I don't know.
Well,
they work out of the home.
Thank you again for your insights. We certainly appreciate it. And I would also invite you to share your contact information with our ad hoc in the event that they might like to follow up with you with additional questions. So if you would be interested in that, we would, I'm sure the ad hoc would be.
No, I'd love
would
to.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, if Mr. Fisher can get that for you. All right, so no other comments on this. So the goal at this point is we'll work on the motion for the Moonlight decommissioning language, and then we will work on approving that. And then Commissioner Quinn, I think you had another comment?
Yeah, just one. What our guest had suggested aligns perfectly with option 3.
Yes, it does. And then, Manager Norgard, with regards to getting any additional community input, do you have, can we reach out to the community at all that has sent in information providing comments so that they would be aware to come in next January?
Yeah, we can publicize the meeting in our newsletter, excuse me, and reach out to, we have a pretty long list of folks that have written in over the years.
Okay.
Both tennis and pickleball. I think it's important to get both sides of that for a balanced approach. But before the January meeting, we'll send some emails out and put something in our newsletter as well.
Okay, great. I think the way I would look at it is I would like to have a recommendation from the commission, if not on January, then in February before this commission year ends. Does that work with regards to the way you would see it, Manager Norgard? Okay. Okay, that was a great discussion. Again, thank you very much to the ad hoc that has spent quite a bit of time in putting that together, providing such a detailed report. Certainly appreciate that. And I look forward to hearing more community input next month. Moving on to number 7, pop-up parks. I don't think there's anything since our last event that we did at the park in Glen Park. I know that the work plan item number 8 for the trails. I know that the ad hoc has met with the Encinitas Trails Coalition and has some information to share with us from the meeting that they had with them and park staff, which they do on a quarterly basis, right? Or bi-yearly?
Yeah, twice a year.
Twice a year, okay.
Yes, Commissioner Quinn and I attended the meeting, and just there was like two kind of Baker takeaways from this meeting. There's a concern for some city liability and safety issues on trails with e-bikes, and I know our relationship with the Encinitas Trails Coalition is a really good working relationship, so they had some requests for us if there was anything we could do for adding more signage on trails regarding e-bikes near the Loden Project and Desert Rose especially, but maybe other trails as well. And also if we would consider, or if maybe the city is considering a similar measure as Coronado to ban e-bikes on city trails and in city parks. So those two issues came up at the meeting.
Do any of the commissioners have any comments they'd like to make regarding that? Or Commissioner Quinn, since you're on the ad hoc, any additional information you'd like to share?
No, but just, my question is kind of related to the pickleball. And the Trails Coalition had mentioned about 8 miles an hour on trail bikes. But my concern is, who's going to monitor that? And we don't even have sheriffs out on the street right now with radar for cars, but then certainly not going to be on trails. But it is a very serious issue, especially the trail that was just mentioned, because the kids they get out of school at LCC and they come down that hill really fast and right into the street. So it is a real liability issue. If we can prevent bikes from being on there, or some kind of a barrier so that they don't come right out into the street, but it is an issue.
Thank you. I would say you are correct. I mean, the sheriff department has indicated that they're not going to be going out on our trails monitoring speed limits, so that's just not going to happen. In the sense of posting speed limit signs, it's kind of like, well, why even bother? One is the audience. I mean, those young kids are just, it says 15 mile or 8 miles per hour. I'm going to go 7. No, they're not thinking that way. But then yes, it's not enforceable. I think some of the suggestions that they had could be good. Some of them kind of fall under parks operations, and would be something that they would work with the Parks Department directly, and some of the recommendations, and then the parks from an operational standpoint will kind of decide that. Regarding kind of the safety issue, I think that one probably falls a little bit more on traffic and maybe even public works, from the standpoint that that aspect of it is a little bit outside of out of our realm. Would you agree, Manager Norgard?
Yes, for the most part, and we can work with Nick Buck and Mobility and our traffic engineering departments as well to take a look at that. We've done things in other areas where we have confluence of, kids leaving school. In Sun Vista Park, we put up some lodgepole fence to create kind of a chicane, so push e-bike users one way to kind of protect some other areas of the park. So that's something that we can look at kind of with our departments.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report, and it's a good partnership that we have with the Encinitas Trails Coalition. They provide kind of the eyes and ears for us, even more than what we could do without them. So it's great that we do those biannual meetings with them and get their feedback. They've also been a valuable partner with the city with regards to donating funds to help us with a variety of projects with our trails. So thank you so much for that. Any other comments on that work plan item? I'm going to go ahead and skip through number 9 because that's completed. Number 10, Commissioner Hanson, would you want to speak to it regarding supportive Friends of Encinitas Parks, patrons of Encinitas Parks, or some other name? Sure.
We've been working real hard on reforming and gearing things up for the corporation to raise money and put it back into the park system. And we've got 6 directors right now that are all very active, and I'm very happy about it. And we have also voted on it called the Encinitas Project. Anyway, we like it. But things are going good, and I think our next step is to start interfacing with the city. Thank you.
Yes, it is indeed, and I'm excited about the enthusiasm of our new board, and everyone's jumping in and helping. There's a lot to do whenever you are kind of restarting an organization from basically first steps again. So yeah, it's been a good learning experience, and it's fun to work with people that are such strong community advocates. So, but yes, I expect that good things will start happening in 2025. So I'm looking forward to sharing more with you later. Moving on to the update on the bylaws, kind of the most recent status on that is Commissioner Quinn and I met with staff earlier, and we had kind of a discussion where we're at, where we should be going. Our sister commission, the Senior Commission, has already provided kind of a draft of what they think they'd like to do, and they have kind of submitted it, and it's going through legal and additional comments throughout the city departments. I think what we're going to be doing is basically taking the Senior Commission and just taking that bylaw and that they're recommending, and then just adding some additional edits to that. So it's our goal to have that to Manager Norgard before next month's meeting. So that's where we're all at on that. Any other comments from that ad hoc that you'd like to add? Okay, great. And then the final one, the naming of that city land, we're still kind of in the early stages, actually the very beginning stages of this particular work plan item. We were waiting first to see if there would be some type of agreement that the city would work out with Sandag. And it's my understanding, Manager Norgard, that there was no agreement that is made at this point. Are they still in communications on trying to come up with something?
At the last city council meeting, council declined to enter into an agreement with Sandag.
And is it because they didn't like certain terms of it and they're looking at renegotiating it, or is it kind of a dead opportunity?
I can't speak to why. I can just tell you where we are right now, and the city's declined to accept that offer. I suspect there will be future deliberations by council on what they want to do and their path forward.
A lot of exactly what that agreement might entail could actually impact this particular work plan item. So that's why we were kind of hoping to get some guidance and from what might come from those negotiations. But I would say in this work plan year, it's really, we're going to kind of work on just figuring out a plan on how to move forward. This is going to be something where it's got a very long time frame. The estimate for Sandag to complete the double tracking is 4 years, so we definitely have some time to work on it. I'll be long off the commission by then. But I think what we'll work towards, though, is basically developing a plan, and that will be kind of our outcome for this particular plan year. I just wanted to get some clarity, too, on the commissioners that wanted to join that particular ad hoc along with me. Commissioner Evers, were you participating on that? Okay, and was there a third commissioner? Okay.
Chair Ritter,
Yes, sir.
I could also add that while we're still working through potential uses and things like that, a possible interim step to work toward one of the goals of naming would be staff and the ad hoc could reach out to some of the local indigenous tribes to get some recommendations from them for further discussion by the commission. So I think it'd be helpful to have their input on whether there's a consensus name or multiple different names and the meanings and the reasons for those names, and then balancing that with whatever other public comment that we get along the way. And that's something that we can probably start now.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you for that suggestion. Any other comments on that particular work plan item? All right, fantastic. Well, that will go ahead and complete line item 8A in the agenda. So let's move on to the informational items, to the park operations report. Manager Norgard, would you share that with us?
Thank you, Chair Ritter. I have a couple items tonight. As you mentioned earlier, the engineering department hosted 3 citizen participation meetings for playground replacement projects. So that was Glen Park, Orpheus Park, and Wyro Park. As the chair mentioned, 2 of those parks, Glen and Orpheus, included adult fitness equipment recommendations. The next steps for the consultant are to take all of the comments and feedback and refine the design and get into construction documents. Scott Valley Park, which is also a playground replacement project, is fully funded. The construction contract for that has been awarded, and the project was kicked off with the contractor. They're currently going through all their submittals. The contractor's in the process of ordering the equipment, and construction should start in about 8 or 12 weeks, probably the later end of that, when the playground equipment is received. At Cardiff Sports Park, the contractor has begun work to replace all of the high-intensity discharge lighting with LED lights. That matches up with our planned rest and renovation periods for the courts or the fields at Cardiff Sports Park, and they're making great progress. They've turned on some of the lights already. Just after the Christmas holiday, they will be removing and replacing the main controller panel, the brain of it, and we expect to have that project completed in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And looking out a little further, the Parks Department will bring an agenda report forward in January to award the next phase for the implementation of the Habitat Stewardship Program. And we look forward to kicking off that next phase of work, which will include some work out on some land that we have on Saxony Road. That concludes my report.
And was it the contract awarded on that habitat stewardship?
The agenda report that we'll bring forward will be the recommendation to award the contract, and we'll be able to disclose the contractor at that time.
Okay, great. And Director Knob, are you going to be the recreation services person for us tonight?
I'm honored to be in that role and to fill in for Manager Hamer, who is with her recreation staff celebrating the holiday and everything done during the year. So I appreciate their time and I appreciate your time, and I'm very excited to be here. I love to brag about our department and the things that we do. From the recreation side of things, the winter guide was distributed to residents, and class registration opened on Monday, December 2nd. There were over 750 registrations on opening day. It continues to grow daily as people make up their plans for 2025. We hope arts, parks, and recreation is on their list as they plan for New Year's resolutions and goals. The holiday parade, Creative in Motion, was an immense success with 150 parade entries. Unofficially, I've heard from other people that the senior commission might have been the top commission walking, but we appreciate all the commissions being out there. So thank you very much to all that participated and attended. Last Saturday, December 14th, the Cultural Arts Division hosted the Encinitas Ballet Academy's Nutcracker at San Diego Academy Performing Arts Center to a sold-out audience for both the 2 and 6 p.m. shows. The kind of excited to move over to the San Diego Academy was that performers in the show and also people that helped create the sets were students from the school. We had some students, not all of them, but we had some students performing and setting that up. So it was kind of neat to see it in addition to our Nutcracker performance. Save the date for the Pacific View Arts Center free open house on Saturday, January 4th. Good way to kick off the new year. That'll be from 10 to 3. The community can tour the new center, meet instructors, enjoy art demos. We're asking you, please, as part of this, promote and come to it. Please come and enjoy. We also have, just to share another exciting thing that for holiday purchasing is a good choice. Music by the Sea, 6 concerts that we hold once a month with a partnership with San Diego Music Society. There's a 6-show pass that can be purchased for $90. We've sold 56 passes already, an unknown record as far as we can look back. Otherwise, if you wait till after the first of the year, that price goes up, and then shows per show are $22 per show. More information on our website, but I'm kind of excited to see those sales going. It's always a fun concert setup for us, 175 total seats available. We wish all of you a healthy and happy holiday season and are excited about the 2025 year and what that holds for Encinitas. I'm glad to answer any recreation questions you may have.
Well, it sounds like you've been busy. Thank you very much. I know that the community certainly loved that holiday parade. It was just packed along the street, and it's fun to see the enthusiasm with the kids participating both as spectators as well as participants. Any other comments on recreation services? All right, let's go ahead and move on to roundtable. And we'll start at the end, and we'll just work our way down.
Not much today, just happy to see the announcement of the Encinitas project and looking forward to see what that brings.
I have no comment, nothing to add, except I wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Nothing to add, and happy holidays.
I wanted to follow up on the last meeting we had, just out in the world of Encinitas. I've run into a lot of people who have been abuzz about the last meeting we had with the people speaking and that individual.
L7?
Yeah, the L7 and that individual who raised a bunch of money selling golf balls. Without knowing that I'm on the commission, just random people in conversations being really excited that that happened. And so I was just proud of that we were able to be a part of helping move that along. And also, happy holidays to all y'all.
I think L7's on the agenda for tomorrow's council meeting?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I actually haven't looked at the agenda.
I haven't yesterday.
All right, well, I've got nothing else to say other than happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas.
All right, I'll go ahead and wrap up things. I would say that, first of all, thanks again to the ad hoc that was involved in organizing our holiday parade. It was fun. It was fun kind of socializing a little bit ahead of time at the American Legion. So it was great to have that group together. I would say that I'm really excited about sharing more information about the Encinitas project with the board and the community at large. We're just kind of working at getting ourselves kind of set up as an organization and getting our website done and doing all that type of stuff. There's so much work to do behind the scenes. You just never realize it until you're deep into it. So looking forward to sharing more of those details in 2025 with you. I think that we've had a very robust year this year on the commission, probably the busiest work plan that I have been in the 4 years that I've been here. So I appreciate everyone's involvement and participating and working towards getting those outcomes that you're going to work on in the next couple of weeks. So with that, I'd like to wish everyone happy holidays. Enjoy the time off. Staff will be on vacation. They'll be closed the week of Christmas, and then they come back on the 6th for a lot of them. So if you're trying to reach out to staff, you're not going to hear any replies. With that, it is 5:57, and I adjourn the meeting.
On position.